Ren was a man broken by war, a wanderer with nothing but silence and scars. But in the hidden village of Hanamura, he found something he thought was lost. He found purpose. He found himself. And for the first time, he belonged. And when the storm of war came, he swore to protect the village, even at the cost of his life. The wind howled through the mountain pass like a dying breath, sharp and cold. It scraped across the exposed skin of Ren, a gaunt and weathered man in his late 30s, with sunken eyes, ragged black hair, and a long coat worn down to its stitching. His boots were torn at the soles, his scarf caked with dried mud, and his blade, long untouched, hung at his side, not as a weapon, but as a burden. Ren had been walking for weeks, though the days had blurred into indistinct memory. He was a man without direction, without companions, without purpose. Yet still he moved, not because he hoped for salvation, but because stopping meant death. He stayed off the roads, choosing the harsh wilderness over human paths. The lowlands were unsafe, filled with starving militias, and broken towns caught in the slow, bleeding collapse of a nation. Fires burned in the distance, smoke curled like ghosts over valleys, once filled with song. Ren wanted no part in it, not anymore. At night he camped beneath outcroppings, knees drawn to his chest, eating little more than pine nuts, root vegetables, or nothing at all. He did not pray, he did not dream. The silence followed him like a second shadow, one that whispered old names he no longer answered to. Whatever he had once been had rotted away in blood and ash. All that remained was movement. But one morning, the mist broke. Ren stood at the edge of a high ridge, breath clouding in the cold air, and stared down into the valley, cradled between ridgelines. A strange warmth radiated upward, carrying the scent of rice fields and wood smoke. There, beneath canopies of frost-covered sakura, was a village, Hanamura. He descended cautiously. The villagers noticed him before he reached the threshold. Thin, alert men in worn armor, hands never far from their blades. Yet they did not attack, only watched, curious, perhaps, wary, but not unkind. Ren said nothing, only bowed low and stood still until they let him pass. Hanamura was like something from a memory half remembered. Wooden homes built in concentric circles hugged the land as if grown from it. Elderly samurai practiced slow sword forms in silence, their movements artful, their spirits calm. A bell rang gently in the wind. Children darted through the snow-dusted paths, giggling with the innocence Ren had long forgotten. He found a quiet patch on the village's edge, where he lay down with his pack beneath a shrine tree. For 3 days, he said nothing, did nothing, until a voice broke the silence. "Hard hands," the man said, "but not a killer's anymore." Ren looked up to see Master Haruto, a tall, white-bearded elder with weathered skin and steady dark eyes that missed nothing. His kimono was plain, his posture regal. He studied Ren not with suspicion, but recognition. "I see someone who's lost," Haruto continued, "but not beyond return. Stay, chop wood, mend walls, nothing more." And for reasons Ren couldn't name, he nodded. He stayed. Each day he worked with quiet diligence. The villagers kept their distance, but did not shun him. There was a rhythm here, peace that did not ask questions. He breathed a little deeper, slept a little longer. But the wind still whispered through the trees. The storm, distant but certain, stirred in the world beyond, and fate, silent as ever, had begun to move again. Spring arrived in Hanamura like a quiet awakening. Snow melted from the eaves of the shrines, pulling gently around the stone pathways. The fields, once brittle with frost, softened beneath the villagers' careful tending. Sakura petals fell like whispers, weaving pink through the air and catching in Ren's unkempt hair as he labored. Here, time did not rush. Days unfolded in simple truce. Morning rice, midday labor, evening stillness. Ren had begun to move differently. He no longer lingered on the edge of the village, but walked his paths like one who belonged. He fetched water from the river, helped old Ichiro mend the fish nets, shared rice with quiet gratitude. Though he still spoke sparingly, His silence no longer felt like exile. In the eyes of the villagers, something had shifted. It was no longer a shadow. It was simply Ren. Master Haruto watched all of it with the patience of stone. One morning, after observing Ren chop wood with quiet precision, he approached. "You carry weight in your hands," Haruto said, "but not all burdens must become blades." He led Ren to the open training hall, a circular space framed by carved wooden beams and open to the Sakura breeze. There is no spectators, only silence and the creak of aged floorboards beneath bare feet. "You were not trained to fight," Haruto said, placing a wooden bokken in Ren's calloused hands. "You were trained to know yourself." Ren bowed low. At first it was a struggle. His stance was too rigid, his strikes too eager, born of instinct, not intention. Haruto's corrections were subtle. He adjusted Ren's posture with the tip of his cane, rephrased lessons into questions. Over time, Ren stopped trying to strike and began to listen to his breath, to the arc of the blade, to the quiet within. There, in stillness, something inside him shifted. He once thought the sword a tool of death, but beneath Haruto's guidance, it became a mirror. And then, there was Aya, Haruto's granddaughter. Aya was in her early 20s, lithe and sharp-eyed. Her presence was kinetic, a contrast to Ren's solemn quiet. She tended the village shrine with reverence, spoke with fire. Aya believed in more than tradition. She believed in transformation. Where others clung to isolation, she argued for outreach, preparation, connection to the outside world. It was not rebellion, it was hope. At first, Ren kept his distance, but Aya did not. She asked questions he rarely knew how to answer. She watched him train, mocked his grim expression, and then slowly they began to talk. Not about war, but about after. Could peace endure? Could they become more than the sum of their pain? In the hush of twilight, they sat by the riverbank, feet in the cold water. Aya threw stones, Ren listened. Their words came sparingly, like petals riding the current. In those moments, something fragile began to bloom. During Hanamura's spring festival, lanterns lit the night like fireflies. Music floated on the breeze. For the first time in years, Ren smiled. A true, unguarded smile. Aya saw it. He saw the man he could become. But as the final lantern rose, a figure staggered into the village gates, his clothes torn, face bloodied, eyes wide with terror. "The warlord," he gasped. "He's coming, burning everything in his path. Hanamura is next." Silence fell. The wind no longer whispered peace. It whispered reckoning. Word of General Koroku spread through Hanamura like a sickness. It wasn't shouted or announced. It passed in hushed whispers between farmers, in the tight-lipped silence of elders, in the darting glances of children who didn't yet understand but felt. The man who had stumbled into their gates, the messenger, died by dawn, burn wounds, poisoned lungs. His final words were carved into memory. Koroku, a name like a blade, a warlord in name only, tyrant in truth. His army of ash-clad mercenaries left nothing behind. No treaties, no survivors, only silence. Panic took root in the village, creeping through narrow alleys and sacred groves like fog. Before the storm, the council convened in the temple, its wooden doors sealed tight against the wind. Elder voices cracked under the weight of urgency. There was no walls, no stockpiles of arms, no allies. Fleeing, they argued, was the only chance. Ren stood at the edge of the room, silent, until the debate fell into exhausted quiet. He stepped forward, not with fury, but with certainty. "If we leave this place," he said, his voice slow but steady, "we lose more than homes. We lose what made us whole again." No one interrupted him. "I've seen what war does," Ren continued, "to land, to people, to memory. But this village, this peace, is rare. We may not stop them, but we can show the world that peace is worth defending." Silence followed. Haruto, sitting cross-legged in the light of the altar flame, gave a slow, solemn nod. "We stay, but we prepare." The mood shifted, not toward hope, but resolve. Hanamura, transformed. Farmers traded plows for spears carved from bamboo. Archers fletched arrows with black crow feathers. Hunters taught villagers how to vanish into the forest, how to snare, how to blind. The elderly passed on ancient techniques, oil traps, tripwire defenses, signal drums. Trenches were dug along the rice fields, their lines hidden beneath reeds. Children were quietly sent to shelter in the mountain caves. Aya led the shrine guards, their movements sharp and fluid. No longer caretakers, they became sentinels. She stood at the vanguard, blade ready, eyes fire bright. And Ren, who had once fled every battle inside and out, now stood at the heart of the village, directing formations, training footwork, inspecting the fences. His scars no longer marked retreat, he marked return. At night, when the lanterns dimmed and the silence returned, he would sit alone beneath the sacred tree, the same one where he had first slept, where he had first spoken, where he had first begun to believe again. One night, Aya found him there. "You never stop moving," she said. "I'm afraid if I stop," he said, "I'll start running again." She sat beside him, the petals drifted around them, glowing faintly in the moonlight. "Why fight?" she asked, her voice quiet. Ren looked up at the tree's blossoms. "Because this is the first place that made me believe I was still alive." She reached for his hand. "Then you won't die alone." He didn't respond, but in the stillness between them, the truth settled heavy in the air. They both knew one of them wouldn't return. Dawn rose over Hanamura like a warning. The sky burned crimson, bleeding into the mist that pooled across the terraces. Sakura petals floated in the morning breeze, mingling with ash. From beyond the hills, the first low drum beats echoed, slow, deliberate, growing louder with each beat. The war had arrived. The villagers moved like breath held in a chest. Archers took their hidden positions among the forested ridges. Traps were checked, signals readied. Children had already been sent to the mountain caves. Every man, woman, and elder who remained knew they might not see another spring. At the village gate, Ren stood in silence. He wore no armor, only the robe Haruto had gifted him weeks ago. Plain, linen, marked by suit and time. His blade, wrapped in cloth, rested in his hands like a promise. He was not there to seek glory. He had buried too many names for that. He stood because he had found something worth protecting, even if only for a moment longer. The first horn pierced the sky. The clash began. From the tree lines came the first volley, arrows black as crow feathers raining into the mercenaries. Screams followed. Tripwire snapped. Slingshot traps whirled stones into skulls. Trenches ignited, sending walls of fire curling around the lower rice fields. Chaos spread, but Kuroko's army pressed forward, undeterred, hardened killers, faces painted in ash, eyes void of mercy. The villagers met them head-on. Aya led a flank from the northern ridge, sword flashing, her shrine guard cutting into their ranks with practiced precision. Her voice rang commands even as blood soaked her sleeves. At the shrine, Master Haruto coordinated the defenders, signaling shifts in formation with an old war drum. Age had not dulled his mind. And Ren stood at the eastern gate like a pillar of memory. He cut through the first wave, then the second. Blades clanged, blood sprayed. His body faltered, but his will did not. He did not move like a man reclaiming lost honor. He moved like someone who had found peace and would not let it be taken again. He bought them time to push back, time to fall back, time to live. When the smoke thickened and shadows lengthened, the ground shook. Kuroko entered the fray. The warlord towered in black iron, his blade broad as a doorframe, his face obscured by a horned helm. He moved with terrifying purpose, where he passed, and scattered or died. And then, he met Ren. Their duel was a storm in miniature. Steel rang like thunderclaps, sparks flew with every strike. Ren's bones screamed, his shoulder dislocated, blood seeped from his ribs. But he fought on, never faster, but more precise, now with rage, with clarity. In one final clash, Ren fainted, ducked, and drove his blade home, just as Kuroko's sword found his side. Kuroko fell. Ren remained standing for only a moment more. Then gently, he crumbled beneath the sacred tree at the center of the square. The petals fell around him like snow. By nightfall, the fires were out. The army had scattered, routed by courage. he never expected. Hanamura stood, scarred, grieving, but free. And Ren, blade still gripped in his hand, eyes closed beneath the blooming tree, wore no pain on his face, only peace. Time did not pause for mourning. It moved onward, softly, steadily, like the wind that threaded through the valley at dawn. In the months that followed the battle, Hanamura rebuilt. Scorched beams were replaced, broken walls were lifted stone by stone. The rice fields, though singed, turned green again beneath the care of calloused hands. Children returned from the caves with laughter still intact, unaware of how close the village had come to silence. Master Haruto stepped down from his duties soon after, his body weary, but his spirit at peace. And so it was Aya who rose, not by declaration, but by presence. She carried the shrine staff with grace, offered guidance with clarity, and walked the village paths, not as heir, but as guardian. The villagers followed her not because of tradition, but because of trust. The sacred tree in the square, once a quiet place of reflection, became a living monument. Its blossoms blew more richly that spring, tinged with the faintest blush of red. Some called it a miracle, others a memory made visible. His body was placed beneath the roots of the sakura, wrapped in the same robe he had worn when he chose to stay. There were no horns, no procession, only a quiet gathering, the rustle of petals and the steady voice of Aya as she read a single line, carved in the wooden marker placed at his resting place. He found honor in the end. Villagers did not speak of Ren often, but they felt him, in the way the wind moved through the bamboo groves, and the way the training grounds remained swept, even when no one had touched them. On misty mornings, when the dew clung on the grass, some claimed to hear footsteps near the eastern gate, slow, measured, watchful. Children began to play near the tree, fashioning wooden swords, mimicking his stance. They shouted stories half remembered and half invented, about how the drifter had slain a demon with a single strike, or how he had once lived among fox spirits in the mountain. They asked the elders, eyes wide, curiosity, was he a samurai? The answer was always the same. No, the elders would say, a soft smile beneath the lines of their age. He was something greater. He chose to become one. Ren's tale was never written in scrolls or etched into shrines, but it lived in the hushed reverence of farmers who remembered his words in the temple, and the tear Aya wiped from her cheek each spring, alone beneath the tree, in the morning wind that swept through the village, carrying with it a presence, gentle, steady, content. Hanamura endured because he stayed, and as time moved forward, the seasons turning, the petals never failed to fall. They drifted like memory, like forgiveness, like echoes of a man who had once walked into the village with nothing and left behind everything. He was not born a hero, but he died as one, and in Hanamura, that was enough.